Could be. Alrighty. And then, yeah, there it went. And now for the Facebook setup. Waiting, waiting. That didn't look like it's... Oh, there we go. And these are... Okay. Put up my second billboard, Saturday evening news. And then we come over here and bip, can do a delete there and just put up host Richard Slezak and go to start broadcast, and here we go. Yeah, we got 9:58 p.m. here at the Voice of Stockton, coming to you over KXVS.org. And we invite small businesses and large. Let's get some light on the subject in here. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Coming up on the top of the hour. And let's see, today we had the function, and that was from 12 to 5. It's a positive monthly event for youth and families and organizations that serve them. Today we had art, music, creativity, activities, resources, and fun. Activities and workshops, music entertainment, information resources, free lunch, Stockton Parks and Splash, the master vendor table, tooth table treating, seed and other community organizations, live performances, and drum circle. Yeah, that was at 1850 Pacific Avenue today. It is 10 p.m. You are web-tuned to KXVS.org. And on November 1st, we'd like you to attend the 7:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Dia de los Muertos Scholarship Breakfast. It's a $15 donation, and it's going to be at Danner Hall on Delta College, and it starts at 7:30 a.m. And it's going to be, it's a breakfast that includes pozole, tamal, pan dulce, hot chocolate or coffee. It's in a festive environment. We will have donated artwork from a local artist for silent auction. Takeout and delivery options are available. All righty. And coming up, let's see, this Friday, November 2nd, this coming Friday, at the Civic Auditorium, there's going to be boxing, professional and amateur, and gates open at 6 p.m., fights start at 7 p.m. Friday night fights at the Civic Auditorium. For events that we have going on. And continuing, we have, let's get the time here, about to go on to the recorded portion, which will be on the propositions, arguments for and against. Barroom reach here for our sponsors. Now you can join and become a member, and we have various membership levels. We're here, our office phone number is 209-467-4455. We are at 231 West Bedford Road, which is right next to 2001 Pacific Avenue. And our sponsors, we'd love to have all small businesses, law firms, doctors' offices, you name it, markets, liquor stores, entertainments. But our current sponsors are Hotel Furniture Liquidators at 1648 North Shaw Road. Nearest cross street is East Fremont, just east of 99. Get furniture for your home, gently used. Books, also gently used. You can get them at the Miracle Mile Bookstore, 2210 Pacific Avenue, and Doors Book Recyclery. Yeah, you can sell them books. That's Tufong too. At 2310 Pacific Avenue. Plastics you bag? Hey, they got plastics. Customs plastics and signs. They fabricate plastic into whatever you want it fabricated to. They got the raw stuff, that is sheets, rods, and tubes. They'll make you signage, stencils, vehicle and boat graphics. They'll print t-shirts and business cards. That's Custom Plastics and Signs at 326 East Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard here in Stockton. Millennium Computer Repair on the road for you. Give them a call at 209-922-1879. Sarfraz Khan, main technician. Hardware and software repaired. Performances enhanced. Lowest prices in town for parts and used computers. Habitat for Humanity, one more on Millennium Computer Repair, 209-922-1879. Again, Millennium Computer Repair at 209-922-1879. Habitat for Humanity, restore your alternative hardware and building materials and furniture store at 4933 Northwest Lane. That's 100 yards south of March Lane here in Stockton. New stuff arriving daily. Furniture, HVAC, electrical, equipment, tools, cleaning products, paint, wallboard, studs. Yeah, it comes through there. That's building materials and studs, not your bag. Donuts, that's what we need. Tender donuts, we bake fresh daily. Chenoweth Sam and Civ Sam at 1304 East Hammer Lane. Yeah, get it. Tender Donuts, open at 4:30 Monday through Saturdays, 5:30 on Sundays till 6 p.m. Tender Donuts at 1304 East Hammer Lane. And you need a t-shirt printed or business cards? Look no further than Leaders T-shirt Printing, 500 East Lodi Avenue, Suite A at Garfield in Lodi. Yep, you too can be a sponsor. Only costs a few $100, but we'll talk about you a lot. So, and in positive ways. You support us, we'll support you right back. Put out the good word for you always. And I'm going to get these other microphones up and going here. And as I said, we're going to have a show tonight continuing on the propositions. First, let me clear the audition, and that's going to take maybe a few minutes. And while we're doing that, I'll just get stuff out and kind of squared away for us. And Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. And bring this other puppy around. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. All right, got 2 good microphones over here. And gonna get a swig of water. Oh, still going down over there on the audition. Oh, my. Yeah, it still has a couple of minutes. And we have these other things up here. Yeah, we got the fights. We had part of De Los Muertos today. So, oh man, we had Saturday's Zombie Walk, Halloween Fire, Historic Downtown Lodi. Oh well, a lot of things going on today. I walked a precinct, the one just south of me, 8th Street, 7th Street, Delhi, between El Dorado and Turnpike. And yes, I walked it for candidates and party positions of a particular party. But you know, people can do otherwise, so this is still taking some time. So that's going back to the proper filing place. So bear with us while that continues. I'm going to go get another bottle. I'll be right back. I'm not going very far. This will take another moment, and we still have a winding down on the, what the heck, it's frozen it looks like. Oh no, it's not. Pardon that long delay. Okay, we can continue on some of this audition work. Yeah, Dodger fans, don't be too disheartened. I mean, those were close. They've all been close games. Closer than the score indicates. Alrighty, boom. Export. Bam. Okay, I hope this doesn't take long. Okay, this says it's doing it very quickly, and alrighty, we only have one more, and we'll see if that's a file to close. It sure is. Oh, nope, it's we can just go ahead and cancel it, And so we'll just close it and do a no, and we got a blank page, which is what we like. I like them. I like to put things away. Put them back. Don't go working over the computer with a lot of stuff on it. Put things away so it's easier for the computer to handle it. All righty. I'm going to get a chew going because I like to chew. And whoop, whoop, whoop. Getting stuff out here. Whoop. Feet have been feeling better, and I'm glad about that. Alrighty. And okay, we're gonna get going here. Up. Got my book out. And I'm going to put the delete there. And today is the 27th, and Saturday evening news. Okay, starting, and we got 10:14 p.m., starting in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, Stockton and around the world. This is Richard Slezak, Saturday Evening News, coming to you over KXVS.org. We got 10:14 here at the John Moriarty studio, and as is our wont, we like to do newsy things. And I like politics and religion, so therefore we're going to utilize the general election guide, which I'll just share it with you and let the world know. Now, what I don't have are the Republican positions on propositions, and I'll try to get those to you. It's not a good thing to overburden the computer, but let's just go see what we have right up here. And so I'm going to just, while this is going on, I'm going to go look this up right now. rnc.org, and not supposed to use the in-house computers for this kind of thing, but it's we'll see how it turns out. It might not work. It seems to be a little picued, and if it doesn't, it does. Oh, wait a minute. This site can't be reached. Okay. I'll just put a delete, and we can go to www.weather.gov. And sometimes, oh my, we got some pink over just to the east of us, over the Sierras, indicating red flag warning. That goes up into Washoe County, Reno, and further east in Nevada. Other than that, things are just real nice and calm over California, and we'll get a local weather report in here, because the weather means something. And I know this isn't for the best for the syndicated show, but although we got 64 degrees, fair. It's going to be partly cloudy this evening with a low of 58. Sunny tomorrow with a high of 76. Partly cloudy Sunday night with a low of 50. Looks to be 52. High of 73 on Monday. Mostly sunny, mostly clear Monday night with a low of 52. 76 looks to be the highs, and 52, 55 the low Wednesday night. So going to indicate we had weather.gov. Okay, now we're going to just go over and get right on into heck. I'm going to try to get this back to Facebook. I might be able to do that before we move over to the, oh, it's still spinning, so. Oh my, we got the live video. That's okay. All righty. Well, okay, let me move about. And looks like we got 1019 here at the Voice of Stockton. Let me check the let's see. Uh-oh. Am I moving about? See, I got one computer and I don't know if I'm getting any broadcast out. If I'm not, I'm not. So here we go anyways. I know the audition, I'm recording the show, but if I'm not going out on Facebook, I'm not going to be lamenting the end of the world. Uh-oh, that does not look like it's working. I'm not getting a Facebook. And what the heck? See, I have one scene. The scene I have up on the house computer doesn't look like it's going out over the XSplit. So I'll make a note of that. 1020 XSplit not carrying webcast. Okay. With that, we'll just have to go forth because I want to bring you this information because we're getting a lot of disinformation out over the TV and some of these lopsided proposition ads. So just to clarify things, we're just going to go through the 11 propositions that are going to be appearing on the ballot. We currently have about 10:21 p.m. here at the Voice of Stockton, KXVS.org. And okay, now Prop 1 authorizes $4 billion of state general obligation bonds to fund existing housing programs. It includes $1.5 billion for multifamily housing program for low-income residents, $1 billion for loans to help veterans purchase farms and homes, $450 million for infill and transit-oriented housing projects, $300 million for farm worker housing program, and $300 million for manufactured and mobile homes. Provides housing assistance for buyers, infrastructure financing, matching grants to expand affordable housing stock, appropriates general fund revenues to pay off bonds for existing programs that have no revenues or insufficient revenues. It'll increase state costs to repay bonds averaging about $170 million annually over the next 35 years. And go over the highlights that we got a shortage of housing. Competition increases home prices and rents. Today, an average California home costs 2.5 times the national average. Monthly rent is about 50% higher than the rest of the country. About 100,000 houses and apartments are built in California in an average year. Some houses and apartments receive financial help from federal, state, or local governments. And typically housing built with these funds must be sold or rented to Californians with low incomes. California receives approximately $2 billion annually from the federal government to support these projects. For veterans, it's a state program to help out veterans who may not otherwise qualify for a home loan. The state sells general obligation bonds to investors and uses the funds to provide loans to eligible veterans to purchase houses. Okay. We go on. The measure provides $450 million to encourage home ownership for low and moderate income home buyers. Funds would be used to provide down payment assistance to first-time home buyers through low-interest loans or grants. Farm worker housing program used for both rental and owner-occupied housing. And the bond cost for Veterans Housing Program, borrow up to $1 billion by selling general obligation bonds. The measure would provide annual subsidies for up to 30,000 multifamily and 7,500 farm worker households. Down payment assistance to 15,000 home buyers, home loans to about 3,000 veterans, and that would be who the measure would fund, would help. Okay. We have 1027. And we're at page 16. Okay. Argument in favor of Proposition 1. I'll do some paraphrasing. It's helps out veterans, hardworking families, seniors, and people with disabilities. Only proposition that directly addresses the shortage of housing by building more affordable homes without raising taxes. But it still needs revenues. Build new emergency housing for homeless children and families, building multifamily housing for working families, and creating home ownership opportunities, creates new supportive housing for people with disabilities and domestic violence victims. And the author, Senator Jim Beal, together we can create affordable housing to help those in need, including former foster youth and low-income senior citizens. Okay, it means dedicating $1 billion solely to veterans housing, providing new housing and ownership opportunities for veterans under CalVet Home Loan Program that has helped 423,000 veterans and their families. California has the largest population of homeless veterans in the country. Homelessness among veterans is expected to increase over the next decade with veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Vets suffering from medical and mental health conditions sustained from their service are at higher risk of long-term homelessness. To alleviate this, a safe, stable, affordable home is how we can provide a lifetime of support for veterans of all generations and their families. And hardworking families need to be able to live within a reasonable distance of where they work. Prop 1 will address rising homelessness in our neighborhoods. Families pushed to the financial brink are living in cars, doubled or even tripled in overcrowded housing. And Kathy Moore, California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, states, domestic violence exists in the shadows, often unseen, forcing many victims and their children to live in unsafe conditions. Emergency shelters cannot meet the demand, and housing crises exacerbate trauma. The ability to live in a stable, affordable home, bringing safety and healing for survivors and their families. Now, this was the arguments were written by Gerald G. Wilson, past state commander, Disabled American Veterans, Department of California, Sharon Ellis, chair of Habitat for Humanity of California, and Gary Passmore, president of the Congress of California Seniors. Now, Gary Wesley wrote the argument, okay, rebuttal to argument in favor of Prop 1. It says bonds would go to a variety of programs that may or may not repay money for each revolving use. Programs are aimed at lessening the housing shortage in California for a very limited number of persons. And let's ask candidates for state offices what they propose. Now, Senate Bill 827 would have stripped cities and counties of the authority to stop big developers from building high-rise apartments and condos in every neighborhood within a half mile of transit hub or quarter mile of existing or later added frequent bus stop. Under the bill, even on-site parking spots could not be required. Oh, corporate executives in California pushed state legislation. Now, over 90% of San Francisco, for example, would have been subject to such imposing high-rises. Be warned, although Senate Bill 827 was not approved, a similar bill could be passed and signed into law after November 2018, the election coming up. Oh, he's arguing against the proposed law could then only be stopped by a statewide referendum, petition, and later vote. Here is one better approach. Infill housing where appropriate, but otherwise restrict new business centers in areas that have room for nearby new housing. So that's doesn't address it. Okay. Here's more. Argument against Proposition 1. He starts by arguing against selling the bonds. How far in debt is the government already? We know. What is the expected total cost of the measure to the public? It's stated. Are the proposed uses for the money specified? Yes. Are the proposed uses justified given other things that may be needed or desired? That's up to the individual voters. Should voters continue to finance projects through higher property taxes when California's property tax system is so unfair? This proposition doesn't address that. Now, he goes on, California's property tax system is unfair. In 1978, passed Prop 13. It prevented the reassessment of real property unless and until the property changes hands or is substantially rebuilt. Okay, Prop 13 has protected real property owners from steep increases. It has also created a system in which new homeowners pay 10 to 20 times more than their neighbors whose property has like value but was obtained long ago. So he's arguing against Proposition 13. The proponents of a ballot measure should bear the burden of explaining why is worthy of support given the full cost available alternatives and other needs and wants. Oh, okay. Rebuttal to argument against Proposition 1. And it restates that it addresses the severe housing crisis to help out veterans, working families, people experiencing homelessness, seniors, people with disabilities, women escaping domestic violence. Prop 1 is not a property tax. It's dedicated to affordable home loans for veterans and their families. It would allow California to leverage federal housing funds nearly $3 to match every dollar we invest from Prop 1. So, we invest $4 billion. Ultimately, we can get as much as $12 billion. Prop 1 will build homes and save lives. California has nearly a quarter of the nation's homeless population. It'll help alleviate the crisis of homelessness. So again, this was written by Kathy Moore of California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, Deborah Johnson of California Veterans Assistance Foundation, and Jennifer Hark Deeks, Executive Director of People Assisting the Homeless. All righty, we have 1037. Okay, going on to Prop 2. And this authorizes bonds to fund existing housing programs for individuals with mental illness. Allows the state to use up to $140 million per year of county mental health funds to repay up to $2 billion in bonds. Ratifies existing law establishing No Place Like Home program, which finances permanent housing for individuals with mental illness who are homeless or at risk for chronic homelessness, as being consistent with the Mental Health Services Act approved by the electorate. Ratifies issuance of up to $2 billion in previously authorized bonds to finance the No Place Like Home program. Amends the Mental Health Services Act to authorize transfer of up to $140 million annually from the existing Mental Health Services Fund to the No Place Like Home program with no increase in taxes. The Act provides funding for various county mental health services by increasing the income tax paid by those with incomes above $1 million. This income tax increases raises $1,500,000,000 to $2,500,000,000 per year. State would borrow this money by selling bonds. No more than $140 million of Mental Health Services Act funds could be used for No Place Like Home in any year. The bond payments would be around $120 million in a typical year. Court approval needed for No Place Like Home. State must ask the courts to approve the state's plan to pay for No Place Like Home. Courts must decide two main issues: whether using Mental Health Services Act dollars to pay for No Place Like Home goes along with what the voters wanted when they approved the Mental Health Services Act. Two, whether voters need to approve the No Place Like Home bonds. The state constitution requires voters to approve certain kinds of state borrowing. The measure approves the use of Mental Health Services Act funds for No Place Like Home. It authorizes $2 billion in borrowing. The fiscal effect of the measure depends on whether or not the courts would have approved the state's plan to pay for the No Place Like Home. If the courts would have approved the state's plan, the measure would have little effect. This is because the state would have gone forward with No Place Like Home in any case. If the courts would have rejected the state's plan, the state would not have been able to move forward with a No Place Like Home. This measure would allow the state to do so. All righty, continuing. Argument in favor of Prop 2, written by Zena Creason, Mental Health America of California. Chet David Swing, President, California Police Chiefs Association. Dr. Sergio Aguilar Gaziola of National Advisory Mental Health Council for the National Institute of Mental Health. Prop 2 delivers the proven solution to help the most vulnerable people experiencing homelessness in California. It builds housing and keeps mental health services in reach for people. More than 134,000 people are languishing on our streets. As many a third of people living in these unsafe conditions are living with an untreated mental illness. Every year, hundreds of people living with a serious mental illness die in pain and isolation. These deaths are preventable. Prop 2 renews our sense of community and focuses on helping to save the lives of the most vulnerable people amongst us. And it would build 20,000 permanent supportive housing units, allows coordinated care of mental health and substance use services, medical care, case managers, education and job training to help people get the treatment and housing stability they need. Studies show supportive housing significantly reduces public health costs and reduces blight. Prop 2 will help establish and strengthen partnerships between doctors, law enforcement, mental health, and homeless service providers to help ensure care is coordinated and tailored to meet the needs of each person suffering from mental health illness and homelessness who is at great risk of becoming homeless. Without the foundation of stable home, the mentally ill are unable to make it to doctor's appointments, excuse me, and specialized counseling services often showing up at emergency rooms as last resorts. Supportive housing provides the stability people need as they recover from untreated severe mental illness. Prop 2 simply needs voter approval to cut through red tape and focus on building supportive housing for people who are homeless and need mental health services. State funding has long been earmarked for these specialized types of mental health and housing services. Together, we can help prevent more deaths on our streets and provide critical intervention by building supportive housing connected to mental health treatment and services. Now, the rebuttal, Charles Madison of Contra Costa, Gig R. Crowder, NAMI of Contra Costa, and Douglas W. Dunn, the chair of the legislative of NAMI, whatever NAMI is. I don't see what NAMI is. We struggle to find treatment and housing supports for loved ones who are targeted by this proposition. We oppose Prop 2 because it takes billions away from our loved ones and rewards developers, bondholders, and bureaucrats. A portion of Prop 53, as determined by each county with community input, must fund supportive housing for those suffering severe mental illness. We oppose cruel and senseless skimming up to $5.6 billion for sorely needed treatment funds for bonds, and giving $100 million to state housing bureaucrats who don't understand the challenges of those living with severe mental illness. Federal government threatens treatment funding cutbacks. Therefore, we cannot afford to sacrifice any mental health services with an A, I'm not sure, funds to solve a problem better addressed at the county level. And neglect and missing treatment resources, causing more individuals with severe and persistent illness to lose housing and result in even more being incarcerated or living on the street. Through stakeholder engagement, counties already know where to best acquire housing for access to critical services. Prop 2 cuts off local input, predetermining balance between treatment and housing needs. Okay, continuing. Argument against Prop 2. And they call it the Bureaucrat and Developer Act. Now, this NAMI, Contra Costa members are mostly family members with skin in the game. They're strong advocates for people living with serious and persistent mental illness, and they oppose the proposition. The proposition is counterproductive because it spends billions in treatment funds that voters of Prop 63 dedicated to the severely mentally ill 14 years ago. If passed, Prop 2 will cause more homelessness by forcing more mentally ill people into severe symptoms that could increase the numbers living on the streets. Again, they go into the cost. They say it's far more than needed to run the program, have also agreed between themselves to take the entire $140 million yearly as administrative expenses, whether or not they need that amount to pay off the bonds. Developer subsidies, low-interest deferred loans that developers will use to build and purchase $2 billion in valuable California housing, plus up to 50% operating subsidies, effectively cost the public even more. Unnecessary because the legislation authorized counties to pay for housing for severely mentally ill. Prop 63 clients in AB 727 counties which can accumulate Mental Health Services Act capital funds for up to 10 years can now do pay-as-you-go both to build housing and to pay rent subsidies for these clients. Counties do not need to pay out billions in interest on bonds, unnecessary state administrative expenses, and developer subsidies to do so. Counties know their mentally ill clients' treatment and other needs as well as what housing is already available. Only they can determine whether their MHSA funds, mental health services, are best used to pay for treatment or to build housing in their localities. Prop 2 does nothing to address systemic legal barriers like limited state protection against restrictive local zoning that make it very difficult to build supportive housing for groups like the severely mentally ill. It is senseless to pay out billions in interest and expenses to borrow money that may sit unspent because of local opposition to supportive housing projects with severely mentally ill tenants. Okay, rebuttal to argument against Proposition 2. Looks like we have 10:50 p.m. here at the Voice of Stockton. That is KXVS.org, bringing you the Voice of Stockton. Again, I am Richard Slezak, and this is the Saturday Evening News. Forgive the XSplit mishaps. Doesn't seem like we're going out over Facebook or YouTube, but the audio is doing fine, so we'll continue with that. Now, again, the rebuttal to argument against Prop 2. Prop 2 creates safe, secure housing connected to mental health and addiction treatment, strengthens partnerships between doctors, law enforcement, and homeless service providers who face the challenge of providing effective care to people suffering from mental illness and substance abuse. It's at no cost to taxpayers, cuts through red tape so communities can use existing funds to address the urgent problem of homelessness. Studies show Prop 2 will help chronically homeless individuals living with a serious mental illness stay off the streets. A RAND study found Prop 2 approach is beginning to succeed in LA County after only 1 year. It got 3,500 homeless people off the streets. 96% of study participants stayed in the program at least 1 year. Taxpayers saved more than $6,500,000 in 1 year alone. Participants visited the emergency room 70% less, saving healthcare costs and easing the burden on emergency responders. Okay. I'll let you know the Democrats support Prop 1 and 2. Now, Prop 3, there's neutrality on my party's part. Prop 3 authorizes bonds to fund projects for water supply, quality, watershed, fish, wildlife, water conveyance, and groundwater sustainability and storage. Okay, authorized new borrowing, $8,900,000,000. Average annual cost to pay off bonds, $430 million. Likely repayment period, 40 years. Source of repayment, general fund tax revenues. And and we get our water from watersheds, and that water flows into reservoirs. Canals bring the water, deliver it around the state. Water is also pumped from underground, from aquifers. A small share of the state's water comes from other sources, such as cleaning and reusing the wastewater that households and businesses send into sewers. Most spending on water is by local governments. The fund those agencies fund most of the projects that provide clean water for people to drink, irrigation water, and protect communities from floods. These agencies spend about $25 billion each year on these types of water-related activities. Residents pay for the majority of this spending when they pay their water and sewer bills. The state gives grants and loans to local government agencies to help pay part of the costs of some of their water projects. Sometimes state departments carry out environmental projects themselves, and sometimes they give grants to local governments, nonprofit organizations, and other organizations for these projects. The state has spent about $4 billion per year to support water and environmental projects. Since 2000, voters have approved about $31 billion in GO bonds and statewide elections to pay for different types of water and environmental projects. Roughly one-third was still available to pay for new projects as of June 2018. This includes $4 billion that was approved by voters through Proposition 68 in June 2018. Prop 3 allows the state to sell $8.9 billion in new GO bonds for various water and environmental projects. It includes about 100 subcategories for how certain amounts must be spent, including for particular regions of the state or on specific projects. The proposition's broad spending categories include the following: watershed lands, $2.5 billion; water supply, $2,100,000; fish and wildlife habitat, $1.4 billion; water facility upgrades, $1.2 billion; groundwater, $1.1 billion. And on the groundwater, funds projects related to groundwater storage to make sure groundwater will be available in future years. There is a program that activities to clean up groundwater by removing salts to make it more usable, $400 million. Projects that help water soak back into the ground. Flood protection, $500 million. Projects include expanding floodplains, which provide area where floodwaters can spread without causing much harm. Pay for other benefits, improving fish and wildlife habitat, increasing water supplies, improving recreational opportunities. And there's mentioned distributes most funding through grants, provides funding for disadvantaged communities, provides greenhouse gas funds for water projects. These include the cap and trade program, which requires some companies and government agencies to buy permits from the state to release greenhouse gases. Program causes some water agencies to have higher electricity costs to operate parts of their water delivery system. Proposition requires that portions of the funding the state receives from the sale of permits be provided to 4 water agencies: Department of Water Resources, Metropolitan Water District, Contra Costa Water District, and the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority. Amount of funding would be equal to each agency's additional electric costs associated with state programs to reduce greenhouse gases. The cost of the state taxpayers to repay this bond would total $17,300,000,000 to pay off both principal and interest. Interest alone is $8,400,000,000. Annual cost estimated $430,000,000. Amount is about 1/3 of 1% of the state's current general fund budget. State bonds would reduce local spending. State funds could increase total spending on projects by local governments. For example, local governments might choose to build additional or substantially larger projects than they would if state funds were not available. We estimate this proposition would result in savings to local governments to complete the projects funded by this bond. So, in favor argument was written by Diane White, water quality scientist, Janet Santos Cobb, California Wildlife Foundation, and Roberto Ramirez, water resources engineer. Now will improve long-term drought preparedness, provide safe drinking water, increases mountain water runoff, repairing existing canals, repairing Oroville and other dams, improving water quality in groundwater, rivers, lakes, and streams, using purified recycled water for industry and landscaping. Betty Andrews, water resources engineer, states California must be prepared for the next inevitable drought and flood, which will be worsened by climate change. Prop 3 gets California ready for changes in water supply, water quality, and flooding, and invests in water conservation and recycling. Biology scientist Peter Moyle states Prop 3 will improve water quality in our ocean, lakes, rivers, and streams and protect natural habitat. And Charles Wilson says California must use all water resources for a reliable water supply and improved water quality. There's quotes from a number of people here in the argument in favor. Esther Fieldman, Community Conservation Solutions, Protecting and Restoring Watersheds, improves water supply and quality. Looks like we have 11:02 here at KXVS.org. This is Saturday Evening News. We're going over the propositions, arguments for and against. California's environment and economy rely on a clean and reliable water supply. That's why environmental and business organizations like the California Chamber of Commerce, Bay Area Council, Ducks Unlimited, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Natural Heritage Institute, and Valley Industry and Commerce Association support Prop 3. And that comes from Alan Zarenberg, California Chamber of Commerce. So, okay, arguments against. Oh boy, Janet S. Roberts, President, Central Solano Citizen Taxpayer Group, Robert D. Jarvis of the same, and Murray T. Bass of the same. The money thrown at a multitude of proposals will not produce one drop of new water. The only way to collect and store rain and snow melt is with suitably placed dams on our major rivers. Prop 3 doesn't fund even one dam. Now, dams do fill with silt. Over time, they're able to store less water, are dangerous if they collapse, and take time and money to remove the silt. Some older dams have been taken down for these reasons. Prop 3 provides money to remove silt from one dam. Other sections of the measure specifically forbid using funds to remove silt, restrictions that make no sense if we're trying to store water. It's basically a scheme to collect a lot of money for special interests. Okay, continuing on the argument against Prop 3. Since 1995, there have been 8 statewide bond measures committing money to water issues. So far, total amount is more than $29 billion. Without dams collecting rain and snow melt from the mountains, extensive agriculture in the Central Valley would not exist. And now that $29 billion has not gone to build one new dam. Officials pander to special interests that pour millions of dollars into parks, hiking trails, wildlife, and like a little bait fish in the Sacramento River and things that have nothing to do with solving the state's water shortages. Half the water in our rivers just runs into the Pacific Ocean. At the end of 2020, will be limited to 55 gallons per resident per day for indoor residential use. And to make sure we get the message, the allowance drops to 50 gallons in 2030. What happens to our trees and landscaping? If you don't have greenery in your yard and think the problem doesn't affect you, in the San Joaquin Valley, there's huge areas of bare land where farmers haven't had the water to keep the trees and crops alive. You can read the details and note that there isn't 1 penny for a new dam. Half the money is going to disadvantaged communities. Number crunchers estimate that interest on the bonds will almost double the total amount that has to be paid back. So, okay. Rebuttal to argument against Proposition 3. We got 1105 here at the Voice of Stockton. Bonds finance schools, hospitals, and clean water just like we use mortgages to buy homes. California's bond ratings are the strongest in years. Prop 3 will repair the Oroville Dam and restoring our mountain and urban watersheds. This is Cindy Montanez of Tree People. Will improve their water storage capacity and the quality of water they produce. This is a key way we can capture stormwater that will otherwise be lost. Everyone from rural county residents to city dwellers will benefit. Jay Sterling of Iron Horse Vineyards says California's agricultural bounty depends on a reliable, balanced surface and groundwater supply. Prop 3 will provide that supply while protecting the environment. Provides enough water for 3 million families, family farmers, and California's fish and wildlife. Climate change will worsen the inevitable next drought. Prop 3 gets California ready for drought without raising taxes. Bill Whitney of Contra Costa State Building and Construction Trades Council says Prop 3 creates good jobs throughout California by building and operating badly needed water projects. And Senator Feinstein, we know how vulnerable California is to drought. The bond makes prudent investment to protect our water supply and to restore wildlife habitat. All righty, we got 1107 here at the Voice of Stockton. Just keeping notes here, paper doesn't forget. And Prop 4 authorizes bonds funding construction at hospitals providing Children's Health Care Initiative statute. Authorized new borrowing, $1,500,000,000, average annual cost to pay off bonds, $80 million, likely repayment period 35 years, source of repayment general tax revenue. Designates 72% of funds to qualifying private nonprofit hospitals providing comprehensive services to high volumes of children eligible for governmental programs and children with special health needs eligible for California Children's Services Program. 18% of funds to University of California General Acute Care Children's Hospitals, and 10% of funds to public and private nonprofit hospitals providing services to children eligible for California Children's Services Program. Majority of children's hospitals funding comes from federal state Medicaid program known as Medi-Cal in California, which provides health care coverage to low-income children in the state. Children's hospitals also receive funding from commercial health insurance coverage, other government health care coverage programs, and private donations. California Children's Services Program, those are for kids with complex chronic health conditions, including many children treated at children's hospitals. State approves hospitals and other medical providers to receive payment for treating children in the CCS program. Other hospitals in California that are not specifically identified as children's hospitals in state law also focus varying degrees on children's health care. These hospitals are often approved to treat children in the CCS program. Voters have previously approved two statewide measures that authorize state to issue general obligation bonds to pay for capital projects at children's hospitals. 2004, Prop 61 provided $750 million, and 2008, Prop 3 provided $980 million in bond funding. Only 13 hospitals specifically identified as children's hospitals in state law are eligible to receive funds under these previous measures. As of May 2018, most of the funding from the previous two measures had been committed to projects, with the remaining funds expected to be fully committed by the end of 2018. Okay, these are for capital improvement projects at the 13 children's hospitals and other public or private non-profit hospitals that treat children eligible for the California Children's Services Program. We got 1111 here at KXVS.org, and the arguments for and against. James Stein, pediatric surgeon, is for. Maria Minion, MD, chief medical officer, is for. And Roberto Guigig, a pediatric gastroenterologist, is for it. Gary Wesley is against it. He wrote other arguments against other bond measures. And then the rebuttal to argument against Proposition 4 was written by Ann Louise Coons, president of California Children's Hospital Association. And start with the rebuttal to argument against Proposition 4. It helps over 2 million sick children every year. Has nothing to do with property taxes on Prop 13. Not $1 for Prop 4 will come from property taxes. Not $1 for any previous children's hospital bond has come from property taxes. And again, in the argument against, rebuttal to argument in favor of Prop A, he addresses the unfair property tax system, vested interest, looking more broadly at improving health care. He suggests that we first look at improving the entire health care system. Asking candidates for statewide offices is also his idea. All righty, closing in on the end. Now, there are 8 California not-for-profit children's hospitals and 5 more University of California children's hospitals. This is where the 2 million kids get their specialized care. They perform 97% of all pediatric organ transplants, 96% of all pediatric heart surgeries, and 76% of all pediatric cancer treatments. 85% of children with leukemia leave our hospitals cured. We've become regional hubs with children now referred to us from many other hospitals in California. It asks voters to consider investing less than $40 per year for each patient we see. 14 years ago, Californians passed the first bond for this. All righty. Well, we'll call it at 11:14. Finney Prop 4. Okay. Little guess, yes, the Democrats support it. And I'll need to get, one of these days, go to rnc.org and go to the California Republican Party to find out where they stand. It's not fair. I mentioned the Democrats and not the Republicans. And it's not good that we only have 2 major parties and the others are so weak. So, with that, folks, thanks for listening in. Sorry about the XSplit malfunctions. This has been the Saturday Evening News with your host, Richard Slezak, and over KXVS.org. And let me creep back here across the big room and get on our Audition computer. Hello, Audition. And shrink that down. Oh, what the heck? Ah! Here we go. All righty. Yep, we're a little over an hour, so we'll just put the stoppage on that. Yeah, this has been the Saturday Evening News with your host, Richard Slezak. We went over props 1, 2, 3, and 4. All righty, put the big stop on that. And I'm going to go up here to the not quite fully functioning XSplit. And